the image that I picked. If you see an image like this and you feel like it's too complicated for you to do and you just want to do a part of it, I put a square right here. You can do just like this little part, isolating part of it if you want. And I'm going to do the whole thing. So I drew it on the canvas. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. Like this is too long. Some of the things are, I looked at it, some of the things are not exactly like the picture, but it's good enough. Okay, so on the top is a value scale. Why we're starting with monochromatic is because the color is such a vast and complicated area of study that we're going to start with one color. The vocabulary that we're going to use today is tint, which is a color plus white, tone, which is a color plus gray, and shade, which is a color plus black. A monochromatic painting is a painting with one color and tints, tones, and shades of that color. So it is one color with value. So it's a color, it's a value painting which is showing lights and darks, but it also has one color in it. The value scale I put up here, we're going to make a value scale too. It's a little bit more complicated than the black and white value scale because you're adding, I'll save this for later. Okay, so I have my styrofoam plate, which is my new favorite palette. I like it better than the plastic palette paper because it's hard. It doesn't like bend. And I don't like the glass because you have to scrape it off at the end of every time. If you have something like this and your paint is wet and you had too much paint out, you can put some saran wrap over it and try to save it until your next painting time. See if it will stay wet. Okay, so I'm going to get out some black. Maybe a little bit more. Some rose. This is one of my favorite colors. It's like a red kind of rose color. Kind of magenta, but not exactly as violet as magenta. I'm getting some extra out. And some white. If I can get white out of here. Oh, I had to take the top off before. Oops. This white is getting old, so it's getting clumpy. Yuck. See that? Oh, that was a dried piece of paint. That's what sometimes happens. I've had this bottle for a long time. So if pieces of it start drying on the side, then you get clumps like that. I'm sure you won't have that. You probably have new paint. Okay, so I have my knife out and I'm going to take a look at my value scale. The value scale is going to be a little bit harder than the black and white value scale. In the middle is going to be I'm going to do it on 5, just rose. I'm figuring out if I should do it on 5 or 6. I'm going to do it on 6. Okay, but it's not just adding black or white to the color in the value scale. It's adding black, white, or gray. So it's a little bit more complicated. Number 1 is going to be white. I'm making another layer. And I may wait for it to dry to do another layer. Okay. So white, I'm making a very light pink. So I'm putting a little bit of pink in here. And this is a tint, a color plus white. Okay. The next one is going to be a little darker. And the next one is going to be a little darker. Remember, you might not get this right on the first time. You might have to mess around with it. The next one is going to be a little darker. Okay. That looks okay. The middle, I'm going to go over again. So now I want to make a color that's darker, but I don't just want to add black to it. I want to add some gray to it. So since we're already in the middle, I don't want to add a light gray. I want to add kind of like a medium or a dark gray. Remember, you can also add light gray to it. So there's a vast array of colors you can use. And I might do that. I might show you, let me see. I'm going to make a gray over here. You can't see. And I'm going to add a little bit of black. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. And a little bit of this. But I need more because I don't want it to be that dulled out. But just think of all the different combinations you can do. Hold on. All right, so this is going to be my next color. And the gray makes it look a little bit more purple. And now I'm going to use the same color. I'm going to add a little more pink to it and then a little more black to it. You can't see. That may be too much. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks okay. Right? So I'm now adding more black and less white to each color that's getting darker. So now I'm going to add a little more pink and a little more black. And the last color is going to be black. Okay. Now on this, I'm gonna make four more colors actually, or 5 more colors, because I feel like I'm leaving out something that you might want to use. So I'm gonna make a light gray. I'm gonna try to make it pretty light. Okay, light gray is right here. Because I did darks and lights, but I didn't really do mediums. So I'm doing these under here. So now in the light gray, I'm gonna add a little bit of rose. I just want you to get a taste of what colors you can make. And then I'm gonna add a little bit more rose. So these colors are a little bit different than these. So you can make like hundreds of colors with tints, tones, and shades. And then I'm gonna do a little bit more rose. I'm gonna stop right there. I just wanted you to see that there's a lot of groups of colors that you can make. And I'm using this as a reference. And I'm going to start with an object, and I'm going to probably try to do one object at a time on this. I'm thinking out loud, so I'm going to start with the two spheres on the bottom. I'm cleaning my brush. Okay, so on the bottom, I'm going to use kind of the light pink gray right here. This is harder than a value painting with just black, white, and gray, because now you're trying to add color. But imagine if you were trying to add all the colors. So it's just, we're taking this one step at a time. Okay, now I'm going to have a little bit of just pink and white. There are people that clean their brush off every time when they go from color to color. And there's a group of people that just let the previous color get into their brush because they think that it adds to the painting and makes it more natural. So you can try both ways and see which one you want to do. Okay, so I added a little bit of light there. And this needs, this is not done, but you have to do, kind of work into it. I'm adding more of the dark in here, and I'm trying to blend it in to the lighter colors so it doesn't look like a stripe. I'm using a small flat. I haven't really, no, it's just getting messier and muddier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a piece of paper towel and blend it right here. So I haven't really talked about the rounds yet. The rounds are used for, let me show you. So this is a small flat. I'm not like, I usually use flats. Everyone is different, but the rounds, whoa. Okay, so the rounds are most usually used. So if you have a small round like this, it's like a pencil with a point. So the rounds are used for edges. I usually try to use flats. That's just me. I prefer them. But like, say you want to get a line. Imagine that this is a pencil around the edge. You use a round. And then I'm going to pull some on the side. And then I'm going to use a little gray on the bottom. And this is just gray. I just put only gray here. I'm trying to blend it. I'm going to add a little bit of water. Sorry, the camera focuses. A little bit of water right here. And then there's my sphere. On the bottom, I'm going to use black for the cast shadow right underneath. The whole thing is not going to be black. But remember, it's the darkest part. And then I'm going to use some gray and blend it into the black because it gets a little bit lighter over here. I'm doing one object at a time here because I feel that if I did it like the value where I was blocking in grays, it would be too complicated for me to figure that out. Since this is harder, I'm trying to do one object at a time. Okay. And I may come back to this object. Okay. Now I'm going to take this sphere and I'm going to go back to my flat. I'm not really like, I'm not really a big fan of the round. What happened to this? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to use the same color here, which is like kind of the gray. And I'm going to pull some down onto the bottom. You can copy this painting if you like, or you can do your own. I'm going to put some in here because this is a little darker and I want them to kind of match. Lighter and even lighter. And I'm letting the colors blend. The top is really light, so I'm just going to put some white on my brush and I'll blend by pulling some of the previous color into it. And I need some of the dark again. I'm gonna have to leave that alone until it dries because it's just getting smudgy. So I'm gonna get my black again. So consider what I'm doing right now. Maybe the first layer. And then I'm gonna get gray. I'm gonna put some black right here, some dark on the bottom. Get some water on my brush. This one has a slightly darker area than the other one. Okay. Now, what object am I going to do next? Those are not done, but they're done for now because I am having trouble with the blending and I want to let it dry. So now I'm going to do this object right here, and I'm going to use my same kind of dark rose, gray rose color for the darks. And I'm just making a shape, a big shape. Remember, the value makes it three-dimensional, even with color. And I'm just going to review the vocabulary one more time. Monochromatic is a color scheme with one color in tints, tones, and shades. A tint is a color plus white. A tone is a color plus gray. And a shade is a color plus black. So I'm putting this value in. In that little area on the top, right here where you see inside, I'm doing that black. And then since I have black on my brush, I'm going to go over here and put in the black. I'm going to use the pink, so the white, the tint, and pull some in here. This is going to take a little bit longer than the spheres because it's bigger. And some up here. There's going to be some right here. And this all needs to be blended a little bit better, but I'm trying to kind of, I guess what I would call it is block in values or colors before I kind of perfect. And then I'm just going to get the regular tint has a little bit of gray in it. Oh well. Make it a little bit lighter and pull it over here. Okay, so that's a decent, that's by far from done, but that's a start. Okay. Okay, so I already started and now I'm going to finish. So let me move my arrow and let me see what I can do to make this look more like the painting. You can have whatever degree of color that you want in the painting. So what I have is pretty dulled out colors, not very bright, so you can make it brighter if you want. It's up to your personal taste. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this and see what I can do to fix it. So I'm going to just get straight white, and I'm going to come in and highlight some areas. I'm using a flat brush. And I'm just making some areas lighter. I'm doing some white right here. And I think this object needs work, but I'm going to go to another object and let it dry. And then sometimes it's easier to see objects in relation to other objects. So I'm going to go to this right here, and I'm going to use the gray again, kind of dried out. Hold on. See what this looks like. Yeah, that looks all right. So I'm just looking at the gray areas. And I'm just putting some paint there where I think it's gray. And this is kind of a rose gray. I'm adding some water to my brush. Okay, so now I'm gonna get some pink, very, very light pink. I left the gray on my brush. I'm just gonna let it mix if it mixes. And I'm gonna put in some of the light areas. I want it to blend with the colors around it. This is a shiny surface, although it's not that shiny. So the hardest things to paint are shiny and transparent surfaces. We may do some of those later. I may do a video just to focus on those. But what you're seeing partially in a shiny surface, this is not totally shiny, it's kind of medium, is reflections of light. You see reflections of light on flat surfaces too, but if it's really shiny, you see a lot. On here, they kind of look like lines. And I'm actually going to leave this and come back to it. Okay, I'm going to look at this top right here and put in a light. I'm going to use that same color, the light pink. It's now light pink gray because I didn't totally clean my brush, but that's fine. When people go with the idea that they don't want to clean their brush, it depends on how much of a perfectionist you are. They're going with the idea that when you're mixing some of the other colors that you're using into the paint, you're creating a harmony that doesn't exist when you're cleaning off your brush every time, because some of the color is getting into the other color. Okay, I'm going to leave that for now and get a darker gray color, a gray rose, and go here. And before I'm going to add to that, but I'm going to leave it for now, and I'm going to go to the sphere. So I'm using my grayish rose color. I'm just mixing a little more of it because some of it dried out on the plate. Okay, so I'm going here. And I'm putting in my dark. I'm going to get a little water on my brush. And a little of the dark down here. Now I'm going to wipe my brush on a paper towel because that has a little too much gray on it. I'm gonna get my pink. I'm gonna put it in this white space. And some pink up here. And then I'm going to try to blend this so it doesn't look like a blob of pink in the middle of a dark. I'm going to use maybe a paper towel to assist with the blending. Okay, so now I'm going to get some white and just add it into the highlights. And some white up here. I wanted to keep my numbers there, but I guess I'm going to go over them. And I'm going to leave it for now until it dries, okay? One layer at a time. So I'm doing as many layers as I can to make it look nice. And I'm going here. What do I want to do right now? I'm mixing a little bit more of my gray rose color, and I'm going to go to this. If this is wet, let me see something. Hold on. Okay. So if this is wet and you're putting your hand down, you can put a piece of paper on top of it so you don't get the paint on your hand and then smear the rest of the painting. So I'm doing a dark right here. And I'm bringing the dark down. And then I'm going to lighten it. So I'm just actually putting some white into that color and making a lighter version. That's not enough. So you really have to mess around with the color. The more colors you have, the harder it is. So I'm lightening it right here. And I'm moving this over. And I'm going to get even more white and lighten it even. I'm going to get white and lighten it even more. It's too dark right here, but I may need to wait for that to dry to fix it. Okay. So now I'm going to go onto this side, which is very, very light. Almost white. That's a little bit less than white. And I'm going to leave it for now, and I'm going to do this part after it dries. I'm taking a look at the bottle, and I'm getting my gray color. And I'm finding where there's a gray. Actually, I need to do something else to this, but let me put the gray in first. I'm just looking for my darks. And then I'm going to go back up here onto this other object, and I'm going to make a darker rose gray or rose black. And this one has kind of a dark area right here. It's pretty dark. So I'm adding that color here. I'm going to leave that for now. And then I'm going to get the pink, the light pink, and go over onto this side of the object. That's too dark. And put it where I see the lights. Some right here. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this right now. And here's my paint. And I'm just gonna continue working. Okay, so I think I'm gonna move on to the boxes. And the boxes are kind of a little bit, they're very light. So I'm gonna use a light pink gray. Okay, so I'm gonna go over here and do this for the dark. The dark is light, is what I'm trying to say. It's not very dark. And then over here, I'm gonna do light pink. Very, very light for the light area. Up here, light. And this is gonna be a little bit darker. Even a little bit darker than the grayish pink I have on the box. So I'm trying to make a color that's a little bit darker than that. And this is gonna be light right here. I'm gonna add a top to here. I don't see it in the picture, but I'm making it on mine just because it's a little bit, I made a mess there. I'm gonna have to change that. So hold on. I'm gonna do the light pink here. I'm gonna fix that. That looks really bad. For the top. Before I do any more, I'm gonna take a look at the background. I'm gonna make the background too dark to make the object stand out. I'm gonna get a bigger brush and I'm using a flat. So I'm gonna use a dark gray, very, very dark. I don't want it just to be black. I want a little bit of white in it. Is that too dark? Yes. I need it to be a little bit lighter. Okay. I may add a little bit of water to that. See how much more the objects are sticking out next to the black. I'm sorry, next to the dark gray background. It really makes them pop out. If the objects were darker, they would pop out more next to a light background. And that's exactly the gray that I want. I'm going to use a smaller brush for the edges. So I'm getting close to the edges. Put some up here. just for consistency. I'm covering my numbers, but I had 10 squares. What I don't see in this is any color like this. So it's very on the minimal sides. I may try to add some later. I'll have to figure that out. Okay. I'm just mixing a little bit more because I kind of ran out. Okay, so since I have this, that looks so much nicer, I think, than just on the white background. Okay, so since I have this out now, I'm gonna go down here, and I know there's a dark down here too, so I'm gonna put it in. I like to like take care of it instead of like remixing it. Okay, so there's some right here. And right here. I'd rather use this gray now than let it dry up, you know? Okay, so I'm gonna leave it. I may have to do another coat later to just make it smoother, but I'm not gonna do it now. And I'm gonna get my smaller brush. I'm not even gonna mess around with the edges. I'm gonna do that later when it's dry. Okay. So now I'm gonna take a look at this edge. Actually, I'm gonna take a look at this gray right here. That's not dark enough. Cast shadow, and cast shadow. I'm gonna look at. Okay. trying to look a little bit at these edges. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone. All right. So now this thing right here has a dark on the inner part of the circle. And a light right here. And I just got some paint on my arm. Right here, it's very light. And I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going back to my gray. And I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. And this edge is kind of dark on the top. And it gets lighter as you go down. So I'm putting in the dark. Remember, if you want your straight line, you use a piece of tape. I'm just going to try to do it with my hand. But please feel free to use tape whenever you want to get it to look really nice. A masking tape. Okay, so under here I'm going to get some white and make a lighter gray. I'm not adding any pink to it. Although you can if you want. I just want the pink for the objects. And then down here, I'm going to do the same gray. I want the objects to stand out as pink instead of having it all over the image, but you can do it any way you want. I'm going to do the gray on the edge. And I'm going to add a light to it over here. And then down here, I'm doing a light gray. I'm going to get a little more black. That may be too much. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Not that much, but that seems too light to me. Remember, if you want to change something from the image, that's fine. Okay, there's some right here. That goes across. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for now. And come back to my objects. So, I mean, I've done quite a bit. Okay, so what do I need to do with these objects? I'm just thinking out loud to myself. Okay, so do I want more pink in them? Maybe. So I'm going to start with this bottle. Do I think that they don't have enough rose in them? I think that's something that I think maybe I want to change. I need to put something down here. Okay, so I put some more rose in the gray. I'm trying to see, this is kind of an experiment. I'm trying to see if I like it. And then I'm going to get some pink, maybe with a little more rose in it, and put it right here. And the dark, I'm going to put on the dark area. You can have some objects with more color and some objects that are more gray. Trying to see if I like it. Yeah, I do. A little tiny bit of dark on this side. Very, very minimal. And then I'm going to go back to my light and blend. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, this can take maybe 3 or 4 hours to get this right, which I recommend if you have the time. If you have the time, I always recommend spending a lot of time. You learn a lot while you're doing it. And this seems like it needs to blend more. Hold on. It seems too exaggerated from one value to the next. So all these things to make it look right. Putting a little bit over this dark. A little bit of dark down here. See how much work it is just to get one object right. A little bit of dark, darker, right here. Black underneath this. A little bit of black underneath the extra parts. So I'm going to add some water to my brush. And I mean, that may be blended, but I'm leaving that alone for now. So I've had my paint like this, and it is still wet. I am going to I'm just going to try to, I did a little bit more, not to do it without you, but I started doing a video and someone was vacuuming and someone was hammering. So you can see that I did some black in the background, and I corrected a few of the objects a little bit, but not that much. I stopped it because someone was making a lot of noise outside. So I'm going to continue from where I left off. So I'm going to look at these objects and I'm going to try to add a little bit more of the rose color. That's what I was trying to do. Just add some detail, clean it up, maybe make some areas of it a little bit more rose. Okay, so here, this is like a grayish rose. I just felt like it was a little too washed out for you to kind of get the idea of a monochromatic. You know what I mean? It needed more of the color in it. So I'm adding some of the color to parts of it. I'm adding some water. And I'm going to rub with the paper towel right here to kind of blend it. I've added some water and now I'm rubbing with the paper towel. I'm going to try to take a look at this and add some, I'm just adding the pure rose color now. I just feel like it's too like washed out paint gray. I want to have some of the rose, and I'm doing it in the areas where it's dark. I'm going to make some of it go over the gray so it blends in. I'm going to add some over here. This area is a little bit dark. And I'm gonna get my paper towel now. And rub. Okay, so now I'm gonna take a look at this cylinder. This looks too messy. Hold on, I'm gonna add some more water. I'm going to add a little bit before I go to the other cylinder. I see another space where I want to add some, so I'm adding a little bit to this edge. Whoops, I got some on the ball. I'm going right over the edge. It's okay if it gets on the black. And then I'm going to add some water. And blend it. It just looks much more lively now with some of the pink in there. Okay, so I'm gonna go here on this black and go over it with rose. Remember, you always have creative license to change something if you want to. Okay, so now I'm going to look over here and put like kind of a wash on the dark of the box. I'm kind of moving around. But I'm not, this has water in it. I don't want to go too dark. And I'm going to do some on this one, and then I'm going to rub with the paper towel. Okay, so it looks something like that. And I'm going to rub. And I'm going to see, this thing didn't have any pink in it, so I want to add some pink. And maybe a little more water for the pink I'm putting on the outside. And some rubbing. Okay, so now I'm going to get just black right now. I did black around here, but it doesn't look clean. It needs to be, cleaned up and blended into the gray, but I'm getting a little bit of black. I'm using a short flat for some of the areas where there's in like there's little indentations on the bottle. So there's some black right here. I'm going to go here on this line black. Right underneath this box, black. On this line, I don't know if you can see that. Black. And right here. I'm bringing this black down with, I have water in it. And then I'm going to rub with I'm going to do this with my fingers. And try to blend it into the gray. I'm going to go right under the table. Sorry, that seems crooked. And do a black right here. And black right here. Okay, so I'm going to get a paper towel now and rub this a little bit. So it blends. And then I'm just going to leave the bottom part alone. I'm going to try to see, since I'm using black, I'm going to go into the cast shadows for a second. And put black right around the edges and it's kind of a dark gray right now. So I'm putting black right around the edges and then letting it go into the dark gray. Maybe a little more over here. Okay. So now I think I'm going to leave the table white. Otherwise, I would do it a really, really light gray or a really, really light pink. So I'm just going to look back into my objects and see, I'm going to go object by object and see if there's anything I think I need to add. I'm going to start with this one. And I'm making a gray rose. It's just taking me a minute to get the right color. Hold on. So this is a tone of rose. Hold on. Sorry about that. That was my alarm clock. So I'm making a tone of rose. And I'm just going to add a little bit more gray to some of the areas that seem a little bit darker. That I think I'm going to leave. And I'm going to take a look at this and put a little bit more gray in here. Some right here. And that looks, it's not blended enough. Let me get some water. It just looks like a big gray blob. And some paper towel. Sorry. And maybe some gray coming down. I'm just was looking around from here. Some right here at the top. Maybe some on the box. With some water. To blend it. And some here. With some water. I'm just kind of cleaning it up. And you'll find you could spend hours doing this, and I recommend that you do if you have the time. I'm just looking at it. I'm trying to see what I need to fix. Right behind these balls, yeah, right behind the spheres, it's like they're kind of casting a shadow on here. So there's a little bit of a darker area. And I think if I mess with the objects anymore, I'm going to mess it up. So I'm going to leave it alone for right now. You can mess with them as much as you want, but I am going to add some more black to the background to try to clean it up a little bit. I'm using a bigger flat brush. I'm just trying to clean it up so it doesn't look like I want it to look smooth. And I want to keep the gray. I just wanted to, whoops, now I'm messing it up again. To add some black, and I'm going to get some water now on my brush. That was a very thick black. I'm trying to smooth it into the gray. Now it's very watery. Well, the background is turning black, but that's fine. This is water on my brush. Ah, what is that? So I'm I I'm gonna stop here. I feel like it needs to dry, and then I think you have the idea, but you could do a whole nother layer on this to make it look really, really clean and beautiful. But I'm gonna stop here. I've already done 4 videos on this, but I just want to let you know how long it takes to actually make a painting. It takes a really, really long time.